all of you dear students. Today we are going to do rock painting. And for you to have idea on how to do this, kindly watch the video about rock painting ideas. Enjoy painting your rocks!
Hi everyone! In this week's video, we'll try out 5 different fun rock painting ideas. Idea number 1 is to create flip-flops or shoes. So you need 2 rocks that are similar in size and shape. So I picked this one that is kind of a flip-flop shape, and then I painted that with a couple coats of turquoise acrylic paint until it was well coated. Then once that was dry, I took a pencil and I started to sketch in the shape of the straps on the flip-flop. Then once I was happy with that, I took some purple acrylic paint and started to fill in that shape that I sketched. And I did a couple coats of this purple acrylic paint until that was well coated as well, so it looked like this. And if you wanted this to be easier, you could stop here, but I'm just going to add some shading around the edges of the flip-flop and around the bottom of the strap. So I just covered the whole area with water, and this will just make it easier to blend the acrylic paint. Then I just took some darker blue paint and diluted it quite a bit with water, and then just started to add in some of that shading. And because that water is on there, it's just easier to blend out. So I just kept adding it until I liked the look of the shading. And then I repeated this process on the top of the rock. So here is the finished flip-flop rock. Another fun idea is to paint rocks to look like emojis. So you'll just need a rock that's kind of a round shape. This one was super round, but it's fine if it's not that perfect. And then just take some yellow acrylic paint and put a couple coats on the rock until it's nice and opaque. Then once that's dry, you can take a pencil and start drawing in the facial features of the emoji. I'm doing the heart eye one, so I'm drawing 2 hearts here. Then once I was happy with that, I took some red paint and started to fill that in. Then I just kept adding paint until those were opaque. And unfortunately, the rest of the footage on this one somehow disappeared. So what I did was I drew out the shape of the mouth and I filled that in with brown acrylic paint. Then once those were dry, I took some water and covered the hearts in the mouth. And then I took some diluted black acrylic paint and added some shading around the edges. Then finally, I added some water all around the whole emoji and then took some darker yellow and added some shading around it. The next idea is to paint rocks to look like fruit. So for this one, I just got kind of a triangular shaped rock to look like a slice of watermelon. Then I took some reddish pink acrylic paint and I put it everywhere except towards the bottom of the rock. And then I just kept adding some until it was opaque. Then while the paint was still wet, I took just a tiny amount of white acrylic paint on the brush and just started to dab that around in certain areas just to add more color dimension to the rock. And I definitely recommend looking at a picture of a watermelon as you do this, just so you can get an idea of where these colors are. Then I repeated this with some red paint. And I just kept adding different colors until I liked how it looked. Next, I took some white acrylic paint and added in just a tiny bit of green, and then painted that on this lower area here. And then I started to kind of blend out that edge just so it wasn't so obvious. And again, definitely look at a picture as you're doing this. So it ended up looking like this. Then I just added some more of that paint down on the lower part of the rock. Then I took a color that had slightly more green in it and just added it all the way to the bottom of the rock. and blended out that edge. Then I just took a tiny bit of dark green on my brush and just dabbed on a little bit here and there, just to add some color variation. Then I painted a dark green color on that lower edge of the rock. And then I added a little light green to it in some areas. The last step is to just add in some seeds with black paint. And here is the finished watermelon rock. Idea number 4 is to paint the rocks to look like food. So I got this rock that was kind of hot dog shaped. Then I mixed some white paint with a tiny bit of yellow and brown to create this color for the bun, and then I just painted this on both sides of the rock to create the shape of the bread. And I just kept adding paint until that was opaque. So it looked like this. Now it's time to paint in the hot dog. So I took this acrylic paint that was kind of the color of a hot dog and painted that in between the two bun pieces. Once I added a couple coats, it looked like this. Then I mixed yellow and brown paint and added a lot of water to dilute it quite a bit. Then add some water on the bun areas of the hot dog. And then just dab this on using the same technique that we used on the flip-flop rock. And you can always add more water, just as long as this doesn't dry, you can just keep adding water to blend everything. And just keep working with it until you're happy with how it looks. Then once I was done with that, I used kind of the same technique to add some shading on the hot dog. And just use water to blend that out. And repeat it on the other side. So it looked like this. And once that was dry, I took some yellow acrylic paint and I painted on some mustard. Then I did the same with ketchup. So it looked like this when it was finished. Then the last idea is to create the illusion that a butterfly or a bug is sitting on the rock. So for this we won't be adding paint all over the rock, so I went straight to using a pencil and drawing out the shape of the butterfly on the rock. Then once I had that sketched out, I drew in a line of shadow around the edges of the butterfly to make it look like it's sitting on the rock. So you can see here those shadow areas and then the shape of the butterfly. Then take some heavily diluted black paint and paint that in the shadow areas. And I would dilute it even more than I did here, just so you can see more of the color of the rock showing through. So it looked like this. Then I came in with a dark brown color and just painted in the whole shape of the butterfly. Then once that was finished and dry, I took some white acrylic paint and just started adding the spots on the butterfly. And you'll definitely want to look at a picture as you do this to make it as realistic as possible. So it looked like this once I was finished. And now I'm just going to add in some black to color the body and color some black lines on the wings. And I'll also add in some antennas. And here is what it looked like when it was finished. I think this would look so cool if you went really realistic with it. Then once all your rocks are painted, you'll want to add some kind of protective glaze on the rocks to protect them if they're going to be outside. So I just used this clear gloss glaze and painted that over all of the rocks. And that's it! And here are all the finished rocks together. I hope you enjoy.